listening to the Picks from the Paddock Turf Talk podcast.
You're listening to the Turf Talk podcast. It's episode 6. It's myself, Rory. It's Chris. It's Luke. It's the man in form, Matt, who bagged 4 winners this time last week. With that in mind, it's the 150 at Cheltenham this Saturday. Might as well come to the man in form first. Matt, your thoughts?
Matt sacked it off and left.
Matt's still got himself on mute. Or he's wetting himself because I came to him first.
He's left.
He's got to look on the app quickly.
I'm here.
Go on, 150, Matt, what are you liking the look of?
Right, the 150.
I mean, Big River seems to have a chance, wouldn't you agree?
I think obviously the condition going to play a massive part in this race, aren't they? It's going to be attritional. It's a 3.5 mile chase in what's obviously going to be seriously heavy ground should the meeting go ahead. The top weight Ramesses to Tele for David Pipe, won on his seasonal debut. He's a horse with probably no stamina or going issues, but he's got the welter burden of 11 stone 12, but he's probably quite rightly the favourite. West Approach run well in virtually identical conditions on the same track 3 weeks ago, but we've mentioned this horse a few times on these podcasts before, and he finds winning incredibly difficult. Course specialist Cogri, he's in there again. He ran well 3 weeks ago in the same race just behind West Approach. He'll run his usual honest race, but I think a couple of us fancy River. Actually, I think he's off a rating of 139 for a horse that's he ran a mighty race in the Scottish National in the spring of last season, and I think he goes in the ground. Not many miles on the clock for a 9-year-old. Yeah, I think definitely Big River is a standout in this race, particularly off 139, and he's gonna have to be fit obviously to win this because it's going to be hard work. But I think he's potentially ahead of the handicapper.
Chris, I know that you like the horse as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this probably revolves around Big River, to be fair. I mean, he also ran well last year in the Ultima. He was powering home at the end, and he was behind some decent horses in that race, very strong stays like Beware the Bear, Vintage Clouds and Lakeview Lad. So, providing he's fit enough off what looks a decent mark, I think he's the most logical bet for me, and around 13-2, you can have a bit of profit if he places, so I go with him each way. I love Cogri, everyone knows I love Cogri, but I'm not convinced with him over this trip on this sort of ground. I think he'll run his usual honest race. Lil Rockefeller always tends to trade shorter than he ought to. Achille would be interesting for Venetia Williams, an informed yard. And Single Farm Payment, he's been called plenty of names in his time and he's burnt plenty enough fingers, but he would have a chance of sorts in an open-looking contest. I couldn't have Ramses Detali. I mean, his record on the eye, or at first glance his numbers look decent, but the gun is to his head, and off that type of weight, he won an egg and spoon race last time. It was on heavy ground round here, but I couldn't be having him at them odds.
And Luke, your thoughts?
Yeah, I quite like just looking at the card. It's a difficult one. There's a few I would straight away cross out, personally. I think Lil Rockefeller's gone right backwards recently, so I wouldn't be touching that. But I do like the Venetia Williams one, Achille. I said, obviously, he's got quite a nice low weight, and obviously Venetia Williams in yard in form as usually this time around in November. So I think I might take a little bit of a each-way punt on that. I'm sure there's 16, 17 runners, so there'll be 4 places, maybe 5 places elsewhere, so a bit of each way money. I think that's 8-1s at the moment, so I think I'd go with that one, Achille, I think.
Oh, you can get bigger than 8-1, mate. You can get 16s at the minute.
Oh, can you? Oh,
there we go. I'm with you. I think it's one of those races where you can probably cross a fair few of these out, and then you end up with a sort of a small handful of horses that would potentially go close. Big River, if the rain continues to fall, then yeah, just purely on its, on its efforts over heavy ground. Cogri, you can't always discount. You can never discount at Cheltenham, but perhaps a bit tricky. Single farm payment, course winner. I like the look of yours as well, Luke, to be fair. Venetia Williams, his horse, tends to have horses that are mudlarks as well. But I like an outsider myself, a former course winner who's got a 50% strike rate here at Cheltenham. It's got a 45% strike rate when running on anything from soft or heavier, and comes out of an informed yard in the form of Nigel Twiston Davis. Arthur's Gift, each way, 8-year-old, won a similar contest to this back in December. I don't think it was last year, I think perhaps the year before. Low weight, 8-year-old, doesn't have too much miles on the clock. I'll be honest with you, this looks a ridiculously open race. So purely for perhaps a bit of value, same sort of avenue you're going there, Luke. Hopefully a horse that can run well at a decent price and perhaps pick up place money. I don't think it'll probably, not look like the Easter Force to win. Perhaps carries a little bit, it carries a couple of pounds more than its last winning mark, but still, you know what, Arthur's Gift, 16-1 for a course winner around Cheltenham. Yeah, I'll take that. Moving on, chaps. Before we move on as well, just to let your listeners know that obviously we're recording this on a Thursday. Cheltenham tomorrow, Friday, has been abandoned. Obviously, there's going to be another inspection for Saturday, so we apologise if you're listening to this and we end up previewing races that don't end up taking place. But crack on, lads. 2:25, Cheltenham. I'll come to you this time, Chris. Slate House and Sir Delac vying for favouritism. Slate House is some people's idea of their banker of the 3-day meeting, albeit that we're not going to have Friday. A lot of people are raving about this horse. Golden Distance winner, Colin Tizard's Yard. Worthy favourite?
Absolutely. The interesting thing with this horse, he was a Grade 2 winner as a novice over hurdles. He's obviously won on the course and at the trip. My slight concern, if I had any, he's obviously been fragile at some point in his career, and although he was impressive the last day, he was never really under any sort of pressure. It was only a 6-runner race, and despite travelling really well, it just weren't a race that you would fall in love with at first sight. But the overall impression is that he's a very well handicapped horse, and he's been well backed. Colin Tizard has been bullish. He's the one for me, just from Suru Delac, who has some very fancy form from last term. He loves the course. He'll go on the ground. He beat Janika a few times last season, albeit in receipt of weight. But Janika has since come out and won a graded race. So his form looks very strong. I can't see anything of the rest that I'm all that concerned about. It's quite dismissive. Us and them would have a chance of sorts. I think Matt likes him, but I don't think there's value at the price with him. And for me, it's one of two. It's either Slate House or Sura Delac, and I will give slight preference to Slate House.
Luke, obviously the Tizard horse has done well last season. Opened up his campaign with a win. Sura Delac unbeaten in its last 4. Could you see anything outside of those two, or where's your money going, buddy? You might still be on mute, though. Luke. Hello, Luke.
Sorry.
It's all right, buddy. Don't worry.
That's right. Sorry. Sorry again. I quite like Slate House. From a bigger price. I don't think so. Calvados is going to run. I think they might possibly take him on the Sunday race. I believe somewhere the Schiller one on the Sunday. I'm not sure. But from a bigger out price, maybe Brendan. Is it Brendan? Sorry, Brendan Das. That one there, maybe possibly. It's done the distance, but again, it's probably pulled up last time, so I'm not 100% sure on that one. But for me, it's all about Slate House and Sir Delac. I think Slate House was impressive last time. In fact, all his wins have actually come from Cheltenham. There's 3 of his wins under rules has been at Cheltenham, so it's clearly like a liking for the course. Again, Sir Delac with Lizzie Kelly back. I think she's back now after her injury. So I would, I still would. I wouldn't say he's a banker, but I think for the price, the price has gone a little bit as well. But I think you certainly get a run for your money with Slate House, that's for sure.
Slate House is probably, I'd probably say the the classiest horse in the race, perhaps. I would probably argue that Sir Delac is probably the most promising horse in the race. I'm with you. That's on the basis that I don't think St. Calvados will run. You know what? Look, there's 20 odd runners still left in the race. Whether or not all 20 go, I doubt it. But you've got to look for value when there's that sort of level of opposition. That sort of number in terms of opposition. So with that in mind, I'm going for a really lightly raced 8-year-old. Came from France, absolutely loves heavy going, anything that's soft. Has been off the track though for about 280 odd days, which is a slight concern, but has won first time out before. Comes from the yard of Venetia Williams. Again, we've already touched upon in the previous race preview. Yard that's in form, horse light to ground. The addition of blinkers might improve it. Look, for a place, Bellamy de Picton might be a decent shout. I think the massive issue is whether or not he's going to have fitness on his side against some of these horses that have obviously already had a run. That's going to be a massive, massive factor. But you know what? I'll take a chance at 14 to 1 roughly. Each way shout. Horse that'll love the ground from a yard in form. Yeah, why not? And Matt?
Yeah, it's as it is every year. It's really competitive race. Slate House obviously bolted up at Cheltenham last time in similar ground. As Chris alluded to, it wasn't a great race, but he's only a 7-year-old and he's got bags of potential. The thing I always, especially in these ultra competitive handicaps, jumping is key for me, and he's still a relatively inexperienced horse, and that would be my one concern, especially at his current price around 9 to 2. Syrah de Lac, obviously the second favourite, is only a 6-year-old, but obviously being a French bred, they're slightly more, they're sort of schooled at an earlier age, and they're slightly more forward. So a 6-year-old French bred would probably be the equivalent of an 8-year-old horse that had been trained in this country. They jump a lot earlier, and I'd say he's pretty streetwise, Syrah de Lac. He hasn't run for a while, and it's going to be really testing ground. And I think at the prices, both of those two, even though they are the most obvious selections, I think I'd probably look a little bit outside the box. And the horse I like a lot is another 6-year-old at the top of the weights called Us and Them of Joseph O'Brien's, who ran in a lot of graded novice chasers last year with huge credit. And to me, pretty much all of the season, I thought 2 miles was always on the sharp side. They always had to make plenty of use of him, and he always stuck on fairly well at the end of those races. And I think the step up to 2.5 miles is absolutely in his favour, and I could see him getting maybe an easy 3 in time. He's definitely the horse I'd be interested in, especially at the prices. So yeah, I think us and Them has got a huge chance. And he's obviously had a prep run only just over a month ago, so fitness won't be an issue. So definitely us and Them for me. And I'd agree with you, Rory, on Bellamy de Pictons. I think he's quite an interesting runner. He's only an 8-year-old with no miles on the clock. Obviously, fitness could be a concern, but it's interesting that Venetia Williams had ASO and Cepage in this race in the entries, and Bellamy de Pictons is her pick to run. So I can actually see a bit of 20s about him, and it wouldn't be the biggest surprise if he ran well. But Us and Them for me.
Thank you very much, chaps. Obviously, we'll move on to Sunday now. Perhaps the classiest race that we'll be covering in terms of the 4 races that we'll be looking at. The 225. It's the 2-mile Schlur chase. It's obviously a somewhat of an indicator towards the champion chase come March. Current favourite, we've got Duffy Dessert at 5 to 4. Politolog at 7 to 4, so not completely, not a complete one-horse race, as some people will be paying out. We've got the likes of Sir Royale at 7 to 2. 8 to 1 bar with St Calvados, Simply Ned, and the rank outsider, Nui Premier Crew. I'll come to you with this first, Matt. Politolog. I personally think it's a bit of a shock to see the horse back over 2 miles. I think perhaps 2.5 miles is its trip. Don't get me wrong, finished behind Altior, but also ran really respectably in the King George last year to finish 4th. Is he just a horse that's really hard to place?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is quite hard to place now. He's another ex-French horse that's been on the go for a long time. Considering he's only an 8-year-old now. Like, he feels like he's been around forever, and I think he is quite a difficult horse to place. I think it's probably a good choice to start him off. I mean, let's not forget we're only in November. Now it's a long old season, and we expect to see Politolog running in races at Cheltenham and Aintree and Punchestown even maybe, and I think it's a good starting point, because it's gonna, even though it's only a 2-mile chase, I think it's gonna feel like probably ride more like a 2.5-mile race in this ground, particularly up the hill, and that could play to his advantage, because we definitely know he gets a lot further than this. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility he could run a big race in this. I think So Royale is probably better on better ground. St Calvados ran a huge race when he won at Cheltenham 3 weeks ago under a massive weight, and he's got fitness on his side. And if he chooses to run in this race rather than the Bet Victor on the Saturday, I could see him running another decent race. I think Simply Ned is also another horse that would probably arguably prefer better ground, and we don't know a lot about the French horse, do we? But they've got him chalked up at 66, so he's obviously not up to much. Defi de Soy, obviously favourite and arguably the most likely winner. He's definitely the classiest horse in the race, and I think we know he stays further as well. He gets 2.5, 2 mile 5 comfortably. So the 2 miles on testing ground won't be an issue for him. But as I said, we have to bear in mind that it's a long season for these horses, and you're not going to want to kill them at the first Cheltenham meeting. The first run at a Cheltenham meeting in November, when their targets are obviously bigger later on in the season. So, I mean, I probably wouldn't have a bet in the race, but I could see Defi de Soy, Politolog, and San Calvados. Actually, probably not too much between all 3 of them at the line.
Oh, you're picking 3 in a 6-runner race. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for that. It's all right. But no, I'm not letting you get away with that. Gun to your head, which one of those 6 is winning that race?
Defi de Soy wins it.
Right. I agree with you. It's boring, but I agree with you. I think it has something ridiculous like an 80% strike rate on soft or heavier going. I think in time we'll probably want more than 2 miles, but the fact it'll be testing probably plays into its hands. Politolog, I think the fact that it'll be testing will probably play into its hands, even though I think that 2 mile perhaps isn't its trip. Can't discount Sur Royal, I think, Calvados. I mean, even Simply Ned on his day is a decent horse, but I mean, his day's long gone at the age of 12 now. But yeah, Defi de Soy with the likes of Politolog or San Calvados to follow them home. Luke, I know it's only a 6-runner race, but it looks a relatively competitive affair, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I think St Calvados, they should probably go for this one rather than skip. I don't think they will be running Saturday. I think they've probably got the better idea to come to this race. I think a lot's in his favour. He's run at Cheltenham. He's won already on heavy ground. I mean, it's interesting that this season, whether or not they've changed tactics, but I think in previous seasons of this horse, they will usually front run it and, on the soft and heavy, it beat, Footpad in Ireland last season, I think. So it's beaten some decent horses on the way through. It's not a bad, I would, for that price, was it about 9-10 to 1? I think you can get. I think it's worth a good shot. I think it'll be in the top. I'd be amazed if it's not in the top 3, definitely. And obviously it'll be 2 to place, but I would go with St Calvados. I think Defi de Soy, obviously, he's probably on paper the favourite and should win it, but I think he's a little too short for my liking, 5 to 4 in the first time out. Obviously you don't know how much he's done, how much work he's done. I'm sure he's done plenty, but some horses need the run first time out, and I think he's had the fact he's got a race. He's had a race in him already, St Calvados. I would be tempted to go with him at that price.
And last but not least, Christopher. as it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, well, St Calvados is an interesting horse. One thing I would say about this horse, he looked trained to the minute the last day. A lot of people suggested if he didn't win last time, he wouldn't win at all this season. So I would be a little bit cautious going with him. However, race fitness is a big advantage at this time of year, especially on ground like this as well. So as much as I don't think he will win, and the reality of it is he shouldn't win, but race fitness at this time of year, there's a lot to like about him, even though I can't have him. The one for me, Defi de Soy, is probably the classiest in the race, and his record on this sort of ground is very good. He's not officially the best horse in the race. That has to go to Politolog. He's run some very good races in open company, but he's never won at Cheltenham, and personally, I think he's probably better going right-handed. I think he's got a better strike rate going right-handed. I know he's won at Aintree, but it's between the top two in the market for me. I would just give slight preference to Defi de Soy, but it's a bad race to be betting in. I mean, Score Royal, I wouldn't have thought would want this ground, and he's questionable in the finish anyway, him. So Defi de Soy for me from Politolog.
Yeah, that's 3 for Defi de Soy, 1 for St Calvados. Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a good race in terms of there's a few big names in there. It'll be nice to see if all of them go. Sadly, I feel that perhaps not all of them will, but if all of them stand, it'd be worth a watch. Last but not least, chaps, we're moving on. The next race on the card there is the 3 o'clock. It's the big race on Sunday, the Unibet Greatwood Handicap Hurdle. Current favourite as it stands, we're looking at the likes of Monsieur Lecoq at 4-1, 13-2 bar. Luke, I'll come to you first with this. Obviously, it's a big runner race. We've got, I think, 19 at the moment. Tough one to decipher. Quite a few young horses in there. Thoughts?
Unmute yourself, Paul.
Luke. He's gone.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
Buddy.
Apologies. I would go with Kel Destin, I reckon. Course and distance winner. He's had a race as well, had a run race, I think. I would fancy Kel Destin. Yeah, of course, there's a lot with a lot of question marks and a lot that you probably would like as well. It's obviously quite a big field handicap. So, yeah, for an each way point, I'd probably go with Kel Destin. There's quite a few on air, which I would like and I wouldn't necessarily like. It's one of those sort of races. But, yeah, it's certainly an open one. But if you had to pick one, it'd be Kel Destin, I think.
Matt?
This is another ultra competitive handicap, as similar to the Beck Victor is every year. It's ridiculously competitive. There's so many angles you can come at in this race. Obviously, Monsieur Lecoq's favourite, quite rightly, 5-year-old, done absolutely nothing wrong. He's got plenty of weight in this, on the ground. Benny's Bridge bolted up, similar conditions, course winner. He'll absolutely love if they go a million miles an hour in this race. He'll be dropped out and he'll weave his way through and only be put in the race at the last. He's definitely got more wins in him off a mark of 137. 100% he has. Dan Skelton's got a horse in there, Humble Hero. He usually lays horses out for these types of races. Concern for him is he's got absolutely no form on this ground whatsoever. I think Kel Destin, if he's got a ridiculously large weight in this for a 4-year-old, is a solid campaigner. He'll go in the ground, he'll keep plugging away. So yeah, as I say, so many different angles. Nicky Henderson's got 2 JP McManus horses in this. You could give Countista a big chance on his third in last season's County Hurdle. But they both haven't run for a long time. So I'm going to look at something at a slightly bigger price, and I'm going to go for Torcello for Sean Lightsit, who the horse has been in incredible form on the flat at the back end of the season on desperate ground and off an absolute featherweight of 10 stone 4. If he can translate that improvement that he has on the flat, in particular in this type of virtually unraceable ground, I think he could run a big race at double figure odds. So Torcello for me.
For what it's worth, the horses that you've mentioned there, Matt, I think for me it's a little bit of a short list of three personally. I mean, I can't dismiss the favourite overly readily even, but at 4-1 in what's going to be quite a big run of field, I need to find something that at least gives me my money back each way. I think of the more fancied horses, Cheltenham, looking through stats, etc., it ticks so many boxes. Has a 100% strike rate on soft going, has a 60% strike rate over the distance, and I think something like 66% strike rate over the course. 2 wins out of 3 at Cheltenham. 4-year-old, I think obviously the weight is its biggest downfall, but if it can overcome that, I think it certainly can sneak a place at about 8-1. I like Countista. I think it'll act well on the ground. Has gone well fresh previously, but again, it's the 208-day absence. It's a little bit concerning, but Nicky can have a horse right. And in a big race like this, you can't overly or readily dismiss anything that's sporting the JP colours. And a bigger price, I like the look of Mahayed. Top weight, I know, but he's a former Cheltenham Festival winner. Will like the ground. He's only about £3 higher than his last winning mark as well. Dan Skelton, again, like you said, will have a horse ready for a race like this. I know I'm edging my bets, but of those three, if I had to, I think I'd probably say, I'd probably play it safe and go Cheltenham for a place. But with the likes of Mahayed and Countista as potential each way alternatives at bigger prices. And Chris?
Yeah, well, I could be sick right now because the one horse that interested me most in this race was Torcello. He will love the ground. He's got absolutely no weight on. It doesn't even matter how good he is in reality against the likes of some of these. His weight gives him every chance, given he's proven on the ground. I mean, if they pulled a few of the hurdles out as well, it'd be even better for him. This is all ground dependent. It's nothing. If this was on good ground, I wouldn't even consider him. He'd be a 100-1 shot, probably more. But that proven ability in the ground is so important. Now you hold him up and you come with a late run, and I can see him picking up some pieces for sure. Sean Lycett has had a winner in the last few weeks. Mark Goldstein has been amongst the winners as well, the jockey. So I think everything points to a good run from him off a featherweight at 14-1. I'm absolutely sick that Matt's decided to mention him as well. The other one I'd be interested in is Koudinov. I probably butchered that name, but Evan Williams, his yard are in good form at the minute. He's had a recent run, albeit I was slightly disappointed he was beaten by Speed Company, but it will have blown away the cobwebs. And off a mark of around 129, for a horse with his profile, there's surely more to come. He'll probably go on the ground without much of an issue. And I think at around 10-20 is another interesting angle with a lovely racing weight,
Thank you very much, chaps. So obviously, you've heard our thoughts on the 4 races that we've covered this weekend. We don't normally touch on any news articles or sort of anything that's in the racing world, but I'll throw this out as a bit of an extra tidbit for this week's podcast. I'm going to start with today, obviously being Thursday, and the return after a ridiculous absence of Willie Mullins' former superstar Duvan. I've not had time to see the race yet myself, but by all accounts was relatively impressive. I'll come to you first, Chris. A lively, did it show glimpses of what its best is?
Well, he readily brushed aside the likes of Monolly, Rory, so it was a fairly smart performance. He at his best, he's entitled to be beating them types anyway, but, the fact he's had such a mammoth absence and he's had he's obviously had problems, and he fell at Cheltenham the other year and he was travelling really well. It's great to see him back. I mean, people would be... You could forgive people for thinking he's a lot older than he is. I think he's only 8 or 9. He's not an old horse, and he hasn't got that many miles on the clock really for one of his age either. So it was an impressive comeback. He was entitled to win. He was very heavily backed, which was quite interesting. He weren't even favourite yesterday. So going forward, you'd love to see him have another go at Cheltenham, wouldn't you? All things being considered, he'd probably, without Altior in the 2 mile, he'd probably win it. So great to see him back. Great training performance from Willie. And, one thing I would say, he did make a couple of mistakes, which in his pomp, he never tended to make them. He absolutely belted the last, but he had it in safekeeping, and it was great to see him back.
Luke, do you think he's a genuine contender for one of the championship races this year, or do you think it's perhaps a bit of a swan song this season?
I think it's just a case of keeping the horse fresh and keeping the horse fit. I think that's really Mullins' biggest challenge. Obviously, it's clear this horse has had a lot of problems to be out for 500 days. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, people say it is a bit of a negative when it comes to that sort of race. He's out for 500 days, but I think this day and age, trainers get their horses really race ready a lot of the time, and especially Mullins. I mean, his gallops and the way they train on the sands of that. I mean, Mullins gets his horses fit. They're ready for the race. They don't just turn up for the run. They turn up to win. So there's a lot to like. I think it's just a case of, where does he go? It'd be interesting to know. Which races he pick? People talk about him going a bit of a further distance. Talking the Ryanair Chase, maybe, possibly. There's a lot to like. I think, again, I reckon he'll probably have one more run, and then maybe he'll go to the festival, will be fit and well. Whichever race that is, unfortunately, I don't know Mullins too well, so it's a good guess.
Right, Matt, I'm going to throw something different at you. It's also come out in the racing world this past week that former Gold Cup hero Native River is more than likely to be aimed at the Grand National this year, as opposed to the Gold Cup as his main target. Correct move from the Tizard Yard?
Yeah, I think so. Why not? I mean, the horse has achieved quite a bit in his career already. As a younger horse, he was a solid, if slightly slow, novice, and then he won his Hennessy, won a Gold Cup, obviously. Beaten. Not everything's easy with hindsight, but I mean, he's beat a horse in Might Bite who's a bit soft. But yeah, why not? He's probably. I think he showed last season that he was probably struggling at the very highest grade. King George, I think he ran in, didn't he, in the Gold Cup, and he just didn't jump with his usual fluency or travel with his usual zest, and he was sort of under the pump for a lot of the way. I don't think Richard Johnson was ever really happy that he got him into a rhythm, enough to be competitive. And I think, absolutely the right decision. He'll obviously have to carry a lot of weight. Why not? Why wouldn't you run the horse in the Grand National?
No, I agree. I think obviously with the Grand National changing so much as it has done, and we saw perhaps with many clouds that top weights and horses with big weights can easily take victory and take success. Obviously, it's relatively breaking news as well in regards to Tiger Roll being out until February. I think if Tiger Roll doesn't go, just trying to have a look at the ratings now. I think Native River's rated 167. Just going to have a look at what Tiger Roll is rated now to see. I'm presuming Native River will be rated higher than him, despite winning a couple of the Grand Nationals. Bear me 1 second. Tiger Roll is off. No, Tiger Roll 172.
Well, the weights are always adjusted for the national anyway, aren't they? So obviously horses that have performed well there before are handicapped accordingly when the weights come out, aren't they? So
with that in mind, would it even play into Native River's hands as well? I think personally, I think it's a great move. I think he's. Do you think the horse could potentially do I guess it's perhaps a word of warning with the likes of Synchronised, but would you potentially use the Gold Cup as a prep run for a national?
Yeah, possibly. Horses have done it before, haven't they? I think if your target this season is the Grand National, I personally wouldn't use the Gold Cup as a prep run, because in any Gold Cup you're gonna try and win it, and ultimately that will take its toll. So I'd take a slightly more sympathetic path if the Grand National was my target. A classic route is maybe to have a couple of runs over hurdles as pipe openers, and then go there fresh, go there a fresh horse and try and do it that way. But I think sometimes maybe horses have run okay in a Gold Cup, and sometimes it's a bit of an afterthought. I know Annabelle Fly, I think, has done it a couple of years with success. Run well in the Gold Cup and then run well in the Grand National. But personally, if I was going to target a horse specifically at a Grand National for a season, I probably wouldn't run in the Gold Cup. Prior to that, because then it only gives you 3 weeks, and big ask.
Yeah. Moving on to sort of final topic, chaps, and I'll come to you first with this, Chris. Michael O'Leary has obviously come out in the press, basically explained, one of his articles explained why he's not using Tiger Hall jockey David Russell on his best horses. Some people are a bit up in arms in regards to this. I will let you explain to the listeners in a little bit more detail in terms of what O'Leary has said, and we'll take it from there, chaps. Chris?
Yeah, O'Leary says plenty of stuff, plenty of the time, and most of what O'Leary says is worth... Well, most of what he says is worth flushing down the toilet, to be fair. I mean, he does say some interesting things. His descriptions and the words he's used on Tiger Hall as a horse have been incredible, considering what the horse has done. But he does make some interesting points and valid points, in my opinion, on Davy Russell. Now, Davy Russell tends to ride the best horses he can in Ireland. So, and they're all for different owners. They're not just for Gigginstown Stud. So it doesn't entirely surprise me that he has thrown him off Sam Crow and Delta Work and, other horses, top-class horses that Gigginstown have. Jack Kennedy is out injured. However, there is no chance that Davy would ride them at the Cheltenham Festival, given he's got mounts like Apple Tard and Presenting Percy. So I don't have a problem with what O'Leary's saying in terms, it's the bit where he goes and says, I'm not wedded to him. And, he sort of belittles a top-class jockey's part in riding good horses. Now, I do agree to a large extent that a horse, more often than not, will pull a jockey out of bother, or, you are more reliant upon a horse than you are the jockey. However, to have a top-class jockey, and one like Davy Russell, who has provided you with so much success, a disrespectful light is, it's hard to take for racing fans. I mean, you grow attached to jockeys and horses rather than trainers and owners, don't you?
Yeah. I think a lot of people that are up in arms perhaps forget that, I guess in the nicest possible way, O'Leary's the paymaster and it's his decision what he does with his horses, really. Do you think that's probably fair?
Well, it's obviously fair. I mean, he's the paymaster at the end of the day. I don't have such a big problem with him choosing who rides his horses. He doesn't use Davy Russell on a retained basis, and Davy Russell will jump ship when he gets offered the better opportunity in a race. So, people wouldn't be criticising Davy Russell then, would they? It's just the problem with O'Leary is he says a lot of stupid things. I mean, I think he's described horses like Tiger Hall before and compared them to a rat. I mean, what sort of idiot says something like that about a back-to-back entry winner, a Grand National winner, a Cheltenham Festival winner numerous times over? You don't describe horses like that.
Matt, obviously you're close to the game in terms of being around horses like this. Do you think he's justified to say whatever the hell he wants because he's his money and he does what he wants? Or do you think it's got to be someone that's perhaps has a word in his ear and goes, perhaps tone that down, or would that perhaps be doing the man no disservice?
I think it's just he's just playing a bit of a game. I think he can say whatever he likes, can't he? I mean, I've seen other interviews where he's talking about his airline, and he's almost got a similar approach to that. I think it's just the nature of the man. I think he likes to be slightly antagonistic, slightly. He's a bit of a tease, isn't he? He likes to lead the press up the garden wall to a certain extent. I just think it's the nature of the guy. I'm not sure whether he's like that just for the papers or the media, or whether he's just like that in every walk of life in general. I think the other thing that we have to give credit to, obviously Keith Donohue's getting a lot of the rides now. He rode Sam Crow and he rode Delta Work, and good luck to him. Fair play to him. These are the guys that do a lot of the hard work behind the scenes. Keith Donoghue will be doing a lot of the schooling on these horses. He'll be doing a lot of the education on these horses, and I think it's great that he gets the opportunity to ride Sandcrow in a novice chase. His first appearance in a chase in public. Because he's probably been doing all the work at home, and I applaud that. And if they've chose Keith Donoghue to, they're obviously a top class operation. They're not going to let people ride their horses that are not capable, and they obviously deem Keith Donoghue more than capable enough, and he very rarely lets them down. To be fair, I can't remember him, making too many errors. So good luck to him.
And Luke, I'll let you have the final word, buddy. Obviously, we've touched upon it, but your thoughts on the whole debacle, or do you think it's a bit of a storm in his teacup?
I think with Michael Leary, a lot of time you got to take it with a pinch of salt. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's contributed in terms of Irish racing. He's contributed a hell of a lot. Into the UK racing as well. Bringing his horses over and everything like that. You can't done something. Back to back nationals is very rare that happens. I think again a bit of a storm in a teacup. He says things, and sometimes he does it to whip up a bit of a reaction. At the end of the day, he pays the bills, so he can do what he wants with the riders. And there's no doubt if Tiger Roll's fit for the Grand National, he'll be on that. I'm sure David Russell, when it comes round. It's just unfortunate. Like I said, if David Russell, he will go over horses. He's made the valid point. I think what I can't remember the horse was, but no, he would probably ride Prince Ent in Percy if it was another Kingstown horse up against it. So, David Russell's, he's got a strong hand as well in this situation. Don't get me wrong, David Russell, I think, is a top jockey. I personally, he's one of my favourite jockeys, especially the guy's a genius around Cheltenham. You can't knock that. The proof's there, and statistically, he makes a profit. Most festivals, if you back him, he'd make a profit over the course of the festival. And yeah, I think he's the top jock. But at the end of the day, Michael Leary can decide that. And there's plenty of other good jockeys that can ride those Gigginstown horses just as well.
Yeah, I think some people, for what it's worth, my small two cents on the matter is, I think people completely forget in regards to, for all that people that are painting O'Leary out to perhaps be a bit of an idiot in this scenario, and saying, oh, well, he should do this, he should do that, like you've just touched upon and the other guys touched upon. It's David Russell's prerogative as to whether or not he wants to ride those horses as well. David Russell has the choice, and he's a very privileged jockey to be able to have such a choice as to what he rides, and not just like to present in Percy, but other very good horses that come out of Ireland, and even he's even taken rides for top yards in the over this side of the water when it comes to major meetings as well. And don't get me wrong, it's all upon merit, and he's earned that right through being a very top jockey. But it's not some sort of slight on David Russell. At the end of the day, if the shoe was on the other foot and David Russell turned around and said, "Oh well, I don't want to ride X Gigginstown horse, or this horse from Gigginstown or that horse from Gigginstown, because I've got a better ride," people would be absolutely fine for him to do so. So, it's a bit of a double standard, I guess, on my part in terms of if the owner decides that, then he's a bit of a villain. But if a jockey was to decide that, then, heavens forbid.
Can I just go? Sorry, interrupt. Can I just go back to that Native River thing?
Yeah, go on.
In regards to Native River for the Grand National. To be honest, I don't know if Matt Maycross touched on it, but it's all very well, but he'd need heavy ground, would he not? Surely at Aintree, is it going to be heavy in March, April? Because I think that's the only way he'd win the National. It's certainly he may get a place that was soft, but it's got to be soft. There's got to be a soft in the description. There's probably got to be a heavy somewhere, possibly. Don't get me wrong, I like Native River as well, but if you do like Native River, he's 25-1 on Sky Bet, and it's non-runner no bet, so that's not a bad bet, to be honest. It's not a bad price.
Grace, I'll let you take that.
Potentially. Yeah, 25-1, non-runner, no bet. You're not going to lose anything if he doesn't run. So to me, it seems a bit of a gimme because he certainly won't be that midday, I don't think.
I think the horse acts on decent ground. I'm convinced that Native River acts on decent ground. I think he just needs the slower ground to slow everything else up. So I take your point on that, because even though obviously the Nationals run over a marathon trip, and now they've obviously modified the fence as they go a million miles an hour now, don't they? Regardless of all the chat in the weighing room beforehand to tell them to put the handbrake on down to beaches, which never happens. I think personally, I think you've got it right there. I think the horse actually acts on good ground, but I think he'll need some cut in it, basically just to slow the rest of them down, so he can lay up over the first circuit. Because as you know, the moment you get detached in that race, it's game over. You need to have a prominent posse most of the way around. You don't see too many horses coming from.
He needs a lead, doesn't he? Or he needs to be in with that pack to start with.
Yeah,
and I think that's the problem. I don't know at a good ground whether he would, because they go helter skelter, don't they? So
yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting, but for 25 to 1, I don't think it's a bad price at all. He certainly won't be that on the day if he did run.
No, definitely not. He'd definitely be near the head of the market.
Chris, I'll let you have the last and final word of the podcast. Obviously, we've touched upon Native River. Do you see him as a feasible or a decent bet for the National? Obviously, non-runner, no bet. It's a great bet at the minute, but, is he his ground dependent? Would the weight be too much to carry?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think he's a... No, there's no issue with the weight, Rory. He's a big horse and he's carried big weights before. His jumping is usually very accurate. So if it was run around Cheltenham time, I think he'd absolutely piss up in the National. I don't care what was in opposition. I don't care if he carried 11 stone 12. If he got his ground and, obviously providing he does jump the fence, I would imagine he would, I could see him absolutely destroying a Grand National field. The likes of Tiger Roll. Tiger Roll is the 4th highest rated staying chaser in training. For my money, Native River would lap Tiger Roll in a conventional race. So, him going to the National would be very interesting. I wouldn't mind what weight he had. You'd have to hope and pray that he got at least good to soft ground or soft. But if it turned up heavy or genuinely soft ground, 25 to 1's an absolute steal. They might not even run him if he doesn't get his ground. I can see him running in the Gold Cup. He'll probably run with credit as a pipe opener. I don't think they'd have any issue whatsoever with what weight he'd have. So why not running in the Gold Cup and then go for a tilt at the National? I think he'd win it if he got his ground.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. A lot of people forget that this horse finished second in the 4-miler at Cheltenham previously. It's won the Welsh National. He's obviously gone close, as well as winning the Gold Cup. We've seen other horses, perhaps in reverse. As a horse that you and I like, or previously liked, Monmouth. Win a National, but also place in a Gold Cup. I think he ticks so many boxes. I think his jumping's pretty much impeccable.
Agreed.
I think he does have one blot on his record, which is fallen once, and that was a novice hurdle back in 2015 around Cheltenham. But other than that, I think, I wouldn't even be overly perturbed if it was good ground. He's won on good ground before. Obviously I prefer it to be soft for him, but I think he even has... I don't think he's a pacey type, but I don't think he's a slow horse either. He's a bold jumper. He comes from a decent yard. Being near the top of the weights isn't an issue, as many clowns have proven. Not an issue whatsoever, albeit I know it's not the National course, but has won around Aintree before, in April, at the meeting. Where do you want to start? I know that a lot of form can't be taken too literally when you look at a race like the National with 40-odd runners, but if you want a horse that ticks so many boxes,
absolutely.
Just
what
do you want from a 25 to 1 shot? You know what I mean? Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a knocking bet. I agree with everything you've said. One thing I would say, he's not a novelty horse. He's not like Tiger Roll. He doesn't need a cross country. He'd win a race over 3 mile to, probably in grade company at this point. He is very much a type like Neptune Colons, a top class, high class grade 1 horse in his own right, and 25 to 1's insulting. If he got round, he'd piss up.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know what? I'd even say, if you're listening now, and you get 25 to 1, non-run and no bet for the National. What is it? It's Thursday the, 14th of November? Yeah, go and get it on, put it on, throw the kitchen sink at it, because you're going to get your money back anyway, and it's not going to be 25 to 1 come April if he ends up running. So, yeah, you've got nothing to lose. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you tune in next week. We have been the Turf Talk podcast from pitchinthepaddock.co.uk.